Okay, so what are things we need here? So basically, we'll be doing this project using a concept called as Agile. Now, I don't know how many of you know Agile. So basically what happens is, normally in software industry, we use SDLC, right? We use SDLC. So whenever you make a software, you have to follow SDLC, which is Software Development Lifecycle. We can use Agile here. The problem with waterfall model is, if let's say if you complete your first stage and if you go to the second stage, what will happen is, uh, if there is some problem with the second phase, or maybe if you are going till fourth phase, and if something goes wrong with the third phase, you cannot go back. And the client requirement is never fixed. Client might change their requirement. So what you have to do is, you have to make sure that whenever a client changes the requirement, you have to adapt those requirements. So whenever you use Agile model, it will be easier for you to adapt that changes, and that's how it will go. Okay. So we'll be using Agile here. So what we'll do is, every week we'll try to complete at least one module. This week we'll be focusing only on the feedback module. So what I did is, from the entire project, so basically we are building my website. So we are redesigning the Telusko website. So we have two advantages with this. The first advantage would be, we'll be having a redesigned website, telusko.com. And the second advantage would be, you will learn how to make a simple project. Okay, I'm not saying this is a very complex project. This will be a simple project, but there are lots of people, they don't even know how to build a project. And while doing this, we'll learn different technology, how to use GitHub, how to deploy application on Google App Engine, and all those things. Okay, so we'll be using Agile here. Next, the database technology we are going to use here is MySQL, and the language, the programming language, will be using Java, because I'm good with Java, so I'll be using Java here. And there's one more thing which we need here. We need a framework for Java, and the framework we'll be using here is Spring MVC. That's great. So let's try to implement this. So we'll directly go with the coding step. So normally what happens is, we have to go in certain steps. Example, first of all, you have to create a database, then you have to create a design, and then you can make the backend part, right? But what we will be doing is, we will be first creating a database, and not the entire database, the only table which we need now. And then later, we'll be going for, so after that, we'll be going for the coding part. We'll be building an application using Spring MVC, and then, okay, so we'll be deploying that on Google App Engine. So today it will be 1 hour session, so 15 minutes already done, so we still have 45 minutes. Let's see how much we can do today, so that the remaining thing we'll do it tomorrow. Okay, so we got some questions there. Do we need JavaScript here? Yes, the knowledge of JavaScript will be important, because my focus here would be to make the backend part live with you. The designing would be, so I will need designing help from your side. So you people will be submitting the design. I want some new design. So if you can help me with the new design, new format, I will show you the columns we need today. Also show you the database part and how to do the Java part. But I would need your help in the implementation, the design implementation, a new design. So yeah, so the database will be using MySQL here. We can also use Postgres, but then the place we are actually deploying this website is Google App Engine, where it provides you MySQL database. So it will be easier to understand MySQL now. And you can also implement that in Postgres, that's fine. Okay, so let me just go to, so the software we'll be needing here is called as, first of all, let's design the database. So what I will do here is, I will open my, so now to create a database, I will be using MySQL Workbench, and in this system, I don't have MySQL, so I have a MySQL database on another server. So I have already one more laptop with me with the address. So let me just connect to that database. So the address, the IP address for that machine is 192.168.1.2, just next to my machine, and the username is root and the password is also root. Click on OK, and so okay, so this is MySQL database here. So we can create any, we can use any DBMS, but I'm using MySQL here. What I will do is, I will create a new table here. First of all, I will create a new database. I will say, okay, how do we create a new database here? So I can use a query string. I will say create, and if it is visible, so I will say create database Telusko. So that's my database. I will click on run. So I go to the database. I will say use Telusko. I just hope you know SQL beforehand. And I will say run. So I got Telusko. And now I will say create. Let me get a table. So today our task would be to create a feedback form. When I say feedback form, I'm actually talking about this feedback form. So let me just open Telusko here. And if I click on this feedback, this is the page we're actually going to create. So we'll be creating a page where we'll ask for the name, we'll ask for the email address, we'll ask for the institute name, or we'll not go for institute name. We don't need that now since we are doing some changes with our database. Okay, and we need, okay, what else we need here? We need a message. So we need a message. And then we don't need all this thing. We are redesigning it. So we will only go for 1 star, the overall rating. We'll not go for a specific one. We'll not go for knowledge innovation. We'll only go for the overall one. And since I'm not good with design, I will not be building this star pattern. So I'll be using simple numbers there. Okay, and then we can click on, so once you click on submit, it should work. It should store the data in the database. That's what we'll be doing now. Okay, so what I will do now is, let me just, okay, so we'll build the same system, but then first of all, we have to make a database, right? So what I will do here is, let me get a table here. I will say create table feedback, and this feedback table needs certain columns. So I will say the first column is name, and name would be of type varchar, and we'll say maximum length would be 30, provided you're not South Indian here. Then we'll go for regarding what. So normally what I want here is, so when I go for, so see, I want feedback for different things. I want feedback for my YouTube channel. I want feedback for my online training. So I do online batches as well, right? So I want feedback for that as well. Okay. So since I go for corporate training, so I do ask them to send me a feedback. So I want feedback for different things. So I need feedback for YouTube channel. I need feedback for online training. I need feedback for batches, corporate batches. So I will say regarding, we'll say varchar, and we'll say 10 because we will. So okay. Well, let's not use varchar. Let's use int. Now why int is because we'll give different values. So one would be corporate training, so one would be YouTube, two would be online training, and 3 would be corporate. Okay, so we got regarding, and then we need code. So we also need a code. Now what is code here? So let's say last week I went to a company, and if I want a feedback from those people, how would I know if those people have provided the feedback? So what I will do in the batch is, I mean, if I go for the training, if I go for the corporate training, I'll ask them, okay, this is your code, and you have to send a feedback with that particular code. So that will be a code. Again, we'll have a clear picture of code once we start with the coding part. We'll go for 10. And then last would be rating. Rating would be from 1 to 5, how good I am in the training. So this would be int. So this is my database here. Okay, and let's try to execute this query. Okay, so you can see I got my table. Now how do I verify I got this table? So let me say describe feedback, and if I run this query, right, so I got all these columns here. Okay, so we got our table here, and now let's insert some data, okay, just to have the default values. So I will say insert into feedback values, and let's say, I would say this is, okay, the first data would be the name. I would say feedback is given by Naveen, so I will give feedback to myself. I will say Naveen, and I will use an email ID which is nvnrdy. Okay, it is not my email ID, okay? I'm using a fake email ID here, and then we'll be using, okay, should reduce the font size of it. So next thing we have to mention the message. I will say message is good. I mean, we can have a lengthy message there. Regarding, so I will take a number here. So regarding 1, which is YouTube videos, and then the code. Now we don't have a code for YouTube videos, right? Because the code is only for the corporate. So what I will do is I will say 3 for the corporate, and I will use a code. So let's say the company is, let's say, Microsoft. So they will use a code called as micro 101. So let's say if the batch number is 101, they will use micro 101. I will give this feedback. I will give this feedback to, I will give this code to the batch earlier before giving the feedback. And then the rating, so let's say rating is 4. So this is the data I want to insert. If I fire this query, you can see it says inserted. Let me just verify if it is inserted or not. We'll say select star from feedback. And if I run this query, you can see we got our data. So we got our first row here. Okay, so we are building a database here. See, we got a database, right? Now, let's say if you want to provide a feedback, of course you need a page to give the feedback, right? And if you want to create a page, and when you send a feedback, that feedback will be going in database. But then we cannot connect HTML to database, right? So we need a language, and that would be a Java language. We'll be using Java to connect your database and your UI. So let's say if you send a feedback, that feedback will be coming in the UI, and that data will go to the Java part, and then Java will insert that into database, right? And to do this, what we'll be doing is we'll be using some software. Now, when we use Java, we have different softwares to work with. I mean, different IDEs to work with. We can use IntelliJ, we can use NetBeans, we can use Eclipse. And since for Java, I will be using a Spring framework here. There are different frameworks available for Java. We have Sturts, we have Spring, we do have different frameworks. But then one of the best framework now is Spring. So we'll be using Spring MVC here. Okay, so for Spring MVC, again, we can use Eclipse here. But then to go with Spring MVC, I will be using a special software called as STS. Now, STS stands for Spring Tool Suite. If I open that, you can see it stands for Spring Tool Suite, and this is basically used for Spring projects. So it is getting open. Let's wait for some time. Okay, this is our software. Now, I don't know if you have experience in Eclipse before, but then whenever you create an Eclipse project, you might be wondering we are using STS, then I'm talking about Eclipse. They are same actually. So when you use Eclipse, you're actually using, when you're using STS, you're actually using Eclipse. Okay, so let me just change this to, so I will use my own workspace. So let's create a workspace class live. So again, what is a workspace? So you can create all your project in one workspace, right? So I will click on this, and you can see my STS is getting open. So I got my STS here. So what we'll be doing is, first of all, let's try to understand how to create a project. So our main focus today is not to write the actual code. Let's try to understand how to create a project first, right? That is important. So first of all, let's create a project here, and then we'll see how to go ahead. So let's try to implement a project. Now, if you don't know about Spring, guys, you can just go to YouTube and search for the videos of Spring videos. So just go to YouTube and search for Telusko Spring, and you can see videos there. Okay, so why we are using Spring? Because it is, so whenever you build a project using some frameworks, it will be easier for you to maintain it. And it is easier to make the project, easier to maintain, and it creates some layers. If you make some changes in one of the layer, it will not affect other layers. It's not compulsory to use Spring here, but then using Spring will give you better. Okay, so I will say new, and so we'll create a Maven project. Now, people who don't know about Maven, you also have to learn Maven first. Okay, so what I will do is, so see, after this session, what you can do is just watch the video once again and be with the flow, because from the next session, you have to build your own project. Let's say in 2 sessions, if you complete feedback form, in fact, in this week, we'll complete feedback form. So from the next week, you have to submit the code to me, right? So you have to submit your code. So you will understand that once you see this session. So I will click on the new here, and then I will go for a Maven project. Now, when you create a Maven project, it will be easier for you to build a project, right? Because Maven gives you all the required dependencies. Normally, when you create a project, we also need some dependencies. So for this, you should have a knowledge about Maven as well. So let me just write it somewhere. What are things you have to learn first? So first of all, you have to be very good with CoJava, okay? And then you have to learn about Servlet and JSP a bit. Basics of this Servlet and JSP. Then you should know about Spring MVC, because we'll be building the project using Spring MVC. And see, my main focus here is not to teach you all this technology. My main focus is, if you know all this technology, how to build a project, right? Then you should know about Maven, how to build a project using Maven. And the awesome thing is, I do have videos on this on YouTube. So do learn this because it will be helpful. And the type of sessions which we are doing now, we'll be doing this type of sessions a lot, so don't worry. If you're not good at these things today, make sure you study all these things in 1 week. I mean, you can do this. See, when you have something, I mean, if you have something in your mind, if you want to achieve something, it is easier to get it. Even in 1 week, it is possible. Okay, so when you create a Maven project, I want to create a web project here. So I will say Maven archetype web app. So when you want to create a web project, so if you want to create a web project, just click on this Maven archetype web app. If you want to create a core project, you can create a Maven archetype quick start. But since we are building a web app, so we'll go for a web app here, which is a Maven archetype web app. The advantage is it will give you the project. It will give you a web project. So we'll go for that. Now it will ask you for the group ID. Now basically, what is a group ID? So whenever you create a project, every project belongs to some companies, right? So let's say as a Telusko, so I'm working for Telusko now. So in Telusko, we have multiple projects. So all this project will belongs to one group, and that is com.telusko. So the group ID should be unique, and the best way to make your group ID unique is by reversing your domain name. If your domain name is telusko.com, just reverse it to make it com.telusko and you're good to go. Then you have to mention the artifact ID. What is artifact ID? Basically is your project name. I will say the project name is Tusk. In fact, I always believe, I mean, I'm doing this project from a long time, so I always refer this project as Tusk project. And then we'll mention this version. So I will say version is 1.0. And then the package name. So package name would be the group ID plus your artifact ID. Okay, and then click on finish. And you can see we got our project. So we got our project here. Where is the project? It's coming. So you can see just downloading everything from the internet. So we got our project. Can you see that? We got Tusk project. But then how to connect this to a server? Because see, whenever you create a web project, you have to make sure that you connect your web server you connect your web app with a web server. Now we don't have web server here. Can you see that? We don't have any web server. So we have a server tab below, and it says no servers are available. So first of all, you have to add a server. So what I will do is I will click on this no server available, and then I will click on Apache. I will create a server. I will use Tomcat 8.0. We don't need any bulky server here. And then click on next. It will ask for the Tomcat installation. So first of all, you have to make sure that you do have Tomcat installation in your system. So to download Tomcat, you can say Tomcat download. Okay, so it will take you to the official website of Tomcat, which is, okay. So depending upon which machine you are working with, if you are using Windows machine, you can pick up one of this, 32-bit, 64-bit. If you're using a Linux-based machine, you can select tar.z. Now I'm using Mac here, so I will be using tar.z. You have to click on this and you have to unzip. You can keep it anywhere you want. Okay, so Praneeth is saying that we should be using JBoss. We should be using JBoss if you are using some enterprise thing. Tomcat will do for my server. I mean, the type of project we are making, Tomcat is enough for that. In case if you want to build a server where you want to provide some EJB applications, enterprise level services, then we need JBoss. Other than that, we don't need JBoss here. But then we can also use JBoss. Yeah, you're right, Akshay. Tomcat is not a full Java EE server. Basically, Tomcat is a web server, and it doesn't support EJB. But we are not using EJB in our project, right? So that's why we'll be going for Tomcat. Okay. I'm getting lots of suggestions in the chat window. That's great. Okay. So what I will do is I already have a Tomcat in my system, which is downloaded and unzipped. So I will go for browse, and you can see I already have Tomcat in downloads folder. So in my downloads, I have Apache Tomcat, which is already unzipped. So I will click on that, click on open, and click on finish. So you can see we got our Apache Tomcat here. I will right click this and we'll say start. Okay, and you can see it says Tomcat started. Now you have to link your project with this Tomcat. Now how do we do that? So right click on the project and say, where is the properties? So we'll say properties, and we'll select on target runtime. We'll select on this, which is Apache Tomcat 8.0, click on OK, and you can see we got our project connected with the Tomcat server. Right, so we got our project here and it is connected to Tomcat server. There's no error now, so error is gone. So now, what next? So if you open this Maven dependencies, now the advantage of Maven dependencies is, if you need any jar files, Maven will give you all the jar files. So like Maven is like a Santa Claus. You just wish for it and Maven will give you those jar files, right? So just close your eyes and say, hey, I want Spring libraries. Maven will say, okay. Yeah, so I'm getting some suggestions here from my team. Okay, so okay, so if I open this pom.xml file, you can whatever jar files you need, you can just mention there, and it will give you the jar files. Otherwise, if you're not using Maven, you have to download all the jar files by yourself, and that, trust me, it is very, it's a pain, you know where. So okay, so if I go to this pom.xml file, and you just have to add the dependencies here. And I'm sure this font is not visible to you. So let me just change the font size and just go to here and search for text. Current fonts. I want to change the basic settings for this. Text font, edit, and let me just make it from 11 to 14 will be good, I guess. Okay, so what is pom.xml file? Pom.xml file is basically a file which stands for Project Object Model. So POM stands for Project Object Model. So whenever you need any dependency, you just have to add the dependency in this file. Okay, so what next? Everything seems good. Now we have to add a Spring dependencies, right? So to download the Spring dependency, first of all, let me just go to the official website of Spring to show you what is Spring exactly is. So if I go here, you can see this is a Spring official website, which is spring.io, and it is managed by Pivotal. And if I click on project here, so you can see this is Spring Framework, and if I click on this, basically we are using Spring Framework here. And okay, so we got, okay, this is the latest version of Spring which we can use. All other versions are snapshot version. Will be going for the current version, which is 4.3.7. And this is the, okay, this is the dependency we want. Okay, this is the official website of Spring, but we want Spring MVC dependency, right? So normally you can get a dependency from the official website of Maven, which is Maven repository. And if you can search for Spring here, so we'll say Spring MVC. Okay, by the time it gets that, well, let's see the comments. Is it App Engine requires subscription? Yes, you have. So App Engine is not free. It is free for 1 year. And after that, you have to pay for the services. And even it is free for 1 year, but you have to give your credit card details. Okay, so even if you want it free, you have to insert your credit card details. That's the only drawback of Google App Engine. I mean, most of them we don't have credit card details, right? Okay, so I will click on Spring Web MVC. Okay, and we'll go for 4.3.7 and click on this, copy this, and we'll paste it here. The moment I paste it, can you see that? Look at the dependency, Maven dependencies here. You got all the dependencies here. We got all this thing here. So we can see we got Spring Web MVC, we got AOP, we got Bean. So all these libraries are required for your Spring framework. Okay, I got some questions here from Devidas. Why we don't use AWS? It is free for 12 months. Even Google App Engine is for free for 12 months. I was facing some issues with AWS, but I'm still figuring out how to use AWS for our project. Videos out. Okay, so Meow Meow says Spring MVC is a framework. What about Spring Boot? So Spring Boot makes your project development a bit easier. So maybe we'll also convert our project in Spring Boot later once we figure it out how to make it work on Google App Engine. But time being, we are focusing on Spring MVC. Okay, for OpenShift Server, we can also use OpenShift Server. The problem is OpenShift Server has closed their free subscription. You have to pay for that, and when you want to pay, why anyone will use OpenShift for when you want to pay for it? AWS is much better than OpenShift, right? So that's why we are using, I mean, Google App Engine is also good. Okay, releasing as paid version. Can we hammer? Oh, 1.9 is releasing as a paid version? I don't think so. Java will ever go for paid version. I had no idea about it. Let's see. Okay, so we got our dependencies here, right? So we got all these dependencies, and okay, what next? The next thing would be we require here is to configure our Spring MVC. So to configure this, first of all, we have to mention that we are using Spring MVC. Now, how do we mention that? Okay, so I already have some cheat sheet with me. I will use that cheat sheet here. I got my cheat sheet. So in this web.xml file, which is there in the web.inf, you have to mention that you are using Spring MVC and all the requests should navigate to Spring. And to do that, we have to add a servlet tag. So I will just copy that thing. I already have that thing with me here and just paste it here. So people who have just joined this session, do click on the like button so that I will know you are enjoying this session, because people are coming and going. I can see that. Okay. Okay, why it is not copying from the local repository? Because I guess, it just copied from the local repository because it was so fast. Otherwise, it would have taken some time to download this thing, right? Okay, you want me to share my cheat sheet? I will do that. Okay, so you can see I have specified that for all the requests, you have to send the request to dispatch servlet, and that's how Spring MVC works, right? Okay, my intention here is not to teach you Spring MVC, okay? My intention here is to teach you how to make a project. So I'm assuming that you already know Spring MVC, and if you don't know that, just go to the channel and do learn Spring MVC. Okay. So what next? So once we have specified that all the requests will go to dispatch servlet, what it will do is it will, okay. So whenever you work with Spring MVC, we have to, where's my Java folder? We don't have a Java folder here. Let me get a Java folder. You can see we have directly resources. What I will do here is I will say new. I will create a package. Where is the package? Okay. Oh, not a package, but a folder. I want a folder here inside src main. So I will say new, a folder. Okay, I want a folder inside main, and the folder name need to be Java, because all your Java files should be inside this folder. Okay, so if it is not there, do mention that. Okay, so question, what about GitHub, when you will introduce that later? So we'll talk about GitHub later. Time being, we are focusing only on Spring MVC. We'll see everything step by step. See, I might not go in a sequence, the sequence which we should follow, but then since we are doing it for the first time, we'll do it as we know nothing. Okay, so what I will do here is I will say new, and I will create a class. And I will say this class as, now since this is our first course, I will say index controller. Now it's not compulsory to use a controller at the end, but it's always better to use controller at the end of the controllers. Okay, don't worry, all the session is getting recorded. Okay, so we got our controller here, and if we want to use a controller, we have to use an annotation to make it a controller, and that Spring annotation is add controller annotation. Okay, and okay, why it is not getting imported? So I will say control space. Okay, the package name should not be Tusk, it should be com.telusko.tusk. That's what I want the package name to be. So I will just replace this. I will say click on this and move to com.telusko.tusk. I don't want this earlier package, right click and delete. Okay, so what next? Here we'll try to, okay, so let me get a method here. So to accept all the requests, we'll go for public void, okay, we'll say public string home. That's our home page, right? So whenever a user requests for the home page, we'll show the home page. Unfortunately, I have not created any JSP yet, but let me do that. Let me create some JSP pages here. Or I will call index.jsp. So that is my home page. So whenever the user calls for a home page, I will call hello world, not hello world. We'll say so that will be my home page. We'll say welcome to Telusko learnings. Okay, and we'll also provide a href for the feedback page. So we'll say a href. If our user want to provide a feedback, or we'll do that later. Okay, let's do that later. So we got our index page, and whenever the user calls for the home page, we'll return index.jsp. But for which request you have to call this? So we have to use a request mapping. So we'll say @request mapping, and in here you have to mention slash. So whenever the user call for the home page, when I say home page, it means slash. So slash represents home. Okay, we'll say control space. Okay, so whenever the user calls for the home page, we have to call index.jsp. Let's verify it is working. And okay, let's right click here. We'll say run on server, which is already a Tomcat server for us. Let's click on finish. Restart the server. Okay, so we got the output as welcome to Telusko learnings. It's just that we got the output in the internal browser. Let's do that on Firefox. Okay, in fact, I will just copy this. I will go to my. Okay, I should be using Firefox here. Okay, so you can see I got welcome to Telusko learning. So whenever you request for a home page, it will call for the index.jsp. So the flow is working now. Now what I want is one more controller who will work with. So let me just close this thing. Okay, I want one more controller who can work with the feedback page. So when I request for the feedback page, example, if I say feedback.htm, it should call feedback.jsp, where a user will enter details. And I don't have a feedback page now, so what I will do is I already have a feedback design here. So let me just, okay. So I already have a HTML page here. Let me just paste that in my web app. I will say paste. And you can see we got feedback1.html. I already created a design. This is a very simple design here. And if I run this code, okay, and I got an error here which says, error is for what? File not found. Okay, that makes sense. The problem here is whenever you work with Spring MVC, you have to also mention one more file which is called as, so in our web.xml file, we are using this thing here, right, which is, we are mentioning that a servlet name is Telusko. It will also look for a Spring MVC, also look for Telusko-servlet.xml file. Again, we don't have to create everything from scratch. Now, the advantage of using STS is you can create a Spring Bean configuration file here, and okay, you can mention the file name as Telusko-servlet.xml. Click on next. Now, what are things we need here? So we need beans, we need context, and we need MVC, nothing else. So we need these three things. Click on next and click on finish. Just taking some time here. By the time, let me just check the design which for feedback.htm. Okay, if I see the design for this, the design is not visible. Okay, anyway. And in this, you have to mention your Java file belongs to which package. So whenever you work with Spring MVC, you have to also mention all these things. And that's the drawback with Spring MVC, right? You have to do lots of configuration. And when you use Spring Boot, you don't have to do lots of configuration here when you use Spring Boot. And I don't know how many of you actually joined this session now. If you have just joined this session, do click on the like button so that I will know that you're enjoying this session. Okay, so we'll use, okay, so I will also copy this from a cheat sheet instead of typing it. So we need to mention this bean tag. Okay, we can actually type it instead of copying it. It will take lots of time. So I will say context component scan, and you have to mention the base package. The base package is com.telusko.tusk. So you have to mention where your controllers are, and you have mentioned the controller belongs to com.telusko.tusk. I guess we are good to go now. Let's restart the server once again. Let me just right click, run on server by restarting the application, of course. Okay, so if I search for, okay, it is working now, but what about feedback.html? So first of all, we have to put everything inside a JSP page. So I will close this and I will create a new JSP page, which is feedback.jsp. We'll right click here. And I want a JSP page. We'll name this as feedback.jsp, and let's replace everything with JSP. Okay, not literally everything, but then the HTML tags. Okay, sounds good. So if you want to call this feedback page, what you have to do is, in this index controller, you have to mention, so whenever a user requests for feedback.html, so public string feedback. So whenever the user requests for feedback, you have to return feedback.jsp. But when we should call it, whenever the request is for request mapping, so whenever the user calls for feedback.html, you have to call feedback.jsp. Let's run this now. Let's see if it is running or not. Right click, run as and on server. Finish. Oh, you want me to increase the font size more? If I increase the font size more, it will come out of the screen. Okay, so if I request for feedback.html, and that's our feedback page. Can you see that we got a feedback page? Okay, so we got our name here. Okay, so let's enter a name which is Naveen, and the email address, oh, I will not use my name, I will use someone else's name. Here I will use Manish. Manish email ID would be m@telusko.com. Website, so you're giving feedback for online sessions. Any code, you can use online 101, and then you can enter a message, we'll say good, and then you can select any of the star. So this is, imagine this is 1 to 5, okay? This is a CSS problem here. So we have not configured CSS yet, and that's why I want design from your side. Okay, so okay, when you click on submit, the data should go for, okay, the code should be only number. So if I click on submit, okay, so the thing is, when you click on the submit, it should send a request to the server, right? And we have not coded for that, and this is what the coding will be done. Coding will be done in the next live session. Okay, this is what we want to do. Okay, the design which I was using is built by me, so you can blame me for that. I'm not using your designs yet. I'm not good at design yet, so you can create a good design for this, something new with the same fields which we want here, and send it to us. So tomorrow we'll be having again a live session and we'll try to complete the feedback module. Yes, this is just a trailer. Okay. Yeah, we'll be doing this, don't worry. We cannot do everything in one day, right? So we are spending more than 1 hour now. This is 1 hour session, I guess. So the assignment for today is you have to, okay, so the assignment for today is you have to complete, do the same thing which I have done and try to, so do whatever we have done till now and give me a good design. Okay, so give me a good design by tomorrow afternoon so that we can embed that here. My planning is not to use Ajax now, but then let's see how to include that. Since I'm not good with JavaScript, I'm not good with Ajax, you have to help me with this. So timing would be the same timing, 5 p.m. IST tomorrow as well. So it would be 5 p.m. IST, depending upon which time zone you're living, just convert that. And please click on the like button if you're enjoying this session and share this video with your friends. Yes, Pojo class will be used to save data in your database. We have not created Pojo yet. We have just configured the application to make it work. We have not started with the actual coding yet. Okay. So this is a big project. Okay, it will take lots of time. Don't be in a hurry. So it will be 5 p.m. IST or maybe 4:30. We cannot go beyond that because other people will find it difficult to join then. Let's see how it goes. So thank you so much for watching and do click on the like button and do share this video with your friends, guys. Please, I need your support here. So that's it. Signing off, guys. See you tomorrow, 5 p.m. IST. Do complete this session. And if you want to be a contributor, you have to send a request to the Facebook group. And if you want us to accept it, do send us the design. So if you send a design, do send your design so that we will accept your request in the Facebook group. So currently we are 70 members there. So if you want to be a contributor, do send us the request. Okay, so that's it. See you into tomorrow's session.